Today we are going to be rejoined by my buddy and friend Mike Dehaan, who just closed a $100,000 wholesale fee. Didn't double close it, was literally like, pay me 100 G's. He also recently drove my Ferrari, is I think the only friend that I've let drive my car, and I immediately regretted it. So we'll share a little bit of that clip with you, as well as all the ins and outs on this deal. We're going to talk about dealing with properties that are on the MLS, as well as networking to make sure that you have the best cash buyers, because they almost made nothing on this deal. Let's dive right in. So Mike, welcome back. I appreciate you being willing to hop on another Zoom with me. I think these are my favorite to do just because it feels like I'm getting to hang out with somebody instead of just talk at my videographer. Although I like hanging out with him as well. His name's Michael as well. But for people who didn't see the first video you and I did, was about hiring kind of key employees. Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will link to that above so you can go back and watch that one. But today, Michael and I have, I think, a really neat kind of scenario to share with you guys about finding the right people to buy your deals. For those of you guys who don't know my story very well, back in 2016, I did like 6 deals. I barely made any money. I barely kept making the mortgage payments of my house that were like $500 a month. 2017, I did 74 deals. And there was a lot that changed kind of in that time frame. But one of the big things was in 2016, I was working with this guy that was kind of a bum. He'd tell me he was going to buy a deal and then wouldn't. He'd tell me he was going to wire in and then the funds would never show up. Since actually he had listed one of my properties as the tax billing address for his LLC, and he actually got foreclosed on by all of his private lenders. So super glad I got out when I did. But 2017, I started networking and meeting other cash buyers, and that really exploded the amount of money that I was able to kind of make per deals. So Mike, why don't you kind of walk us through this particular property? Like, what were you set to make? What happened? How'd you find the buyer that ended up, doing the deal, and what'd you make on it?
Yeah, so I guess the deal in this situation was a land deal, came through a cold call. Situation with the seller is essentially an inherited property, and it was listed with a real estate agent for way too much money. The real estate agent didn't really know, I don't think, how to evaluate this type of land just because of the zoning. It was kind of a unique property. So it was listed for $460. On the cold call notes we had, he wanted $420. And then my act manager called, and he basically said that he was pretty firm on that. And then she called me and relayed the information. And I wasn't super interested in the property. I was like, yeah, I don't really know what we're going to do with it. It'll be a weird one to find a buyer for. I was like, I don't know, offer him 180, and if we can get it for 50 cents on what he thinks it's worth, maybe we can figure something out. And she was like, oh God, okay, I don't want to go have that conversation, but she did. And then he hard no right off the bat. And then he called back essentially 20 minutes later and was like, well, could you guys do 200? And we were like, yeah, okay. I know it's worth at least that, so we can figure something out. So anyway, we got to know him a little better, and the seller's whole situation was, he's like a college kid who got a property. So, for him, it was basically just free money, and he was paying taxes. He'd inherited this from his dad who passed away. So it's pretty good. He was happy with that. So we started trying to find a buyer, and, like I said, it was unique, kind of hard to find stuff for. Find someone that would be interested in it. So we initially found somebody who had a history of doing developments of this kind of property. And we were going to make a $25,000 fee on it. And then just as we were going through it, he drove up there and he's like, it's like, I don't know, there's some rezoning stuff. And this guy is a big enough player that it just wasn't worth his time for what he thought it was worth. So essentially he backed out before his money went hard. And then I was like, well, now we're kind of stuck with it. I didn't really have a huge network of buyers for this sort of stuff. And it just happened to be that same night I was going out to grab a drink with a friend who's also an investor in town. And he came up and he goes, oh, I think I know some guys who want this. And essentially we, shopped it around. He shopped it around to a few of his people. And what they ended up kind of doing is forming a conglomerate in an LLC that was going to buy this thing. So we had it for 200. He comes back and he goes, we hadn't really talked numbers about it yet, but he goes, yeah, I think that we could pay 300 for this thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think we got some room there. We can make
and
that
you
work.
tried like real hard to like keep your excitement like,
Oh yeah,
300, okay.
oh yeah, it was crazy. We're doing all this over the phone at that point, and literally when he called and said they could do that, and I got the signed doc, I went up to my wife and I was like, oh my god, things just got crazy with this.
Is that the biggest deal you've done?
Oh yeah, hands down.
Did you double close it or did you just assign it?
We just assigned it. I mean, so
yeah.
yeah.
I love like the balls there of just like, yeah, you're paying me a $100,000 finder's fee.
Yeah, well, I was kind of worried about that at first, but the people that were involved in it, they're all investors. They get it, and they got a good deal with what they're going to do. So they're essentially going to rezone it to like an industrial style lot and throw storage units in a super desirable area. And they have some experienced people that are going to do it. So they're going to make really good money off of it. So to them, it worked. I mean, to us, it really worked. So, it just sort of all came together. But I think one of the biggest takeaways was how important it was of just like, I don't know, having that network of being able to talk to people. I feel like it's funny, a lot of podcasts I've done with people recently, I harp that a lot, but that's literally what has built our entire business, is knowing people that can get things done. And even going through this process of them buying it, they started to get cold a couple times and try to like back out. And so, like they was like, oh, we can't figure this out with the zoning because the county's too slow. So I'm like, all right, well, who do I know that has connections in the county so we can find this out faster? So I was like helping facilitate a lot of their due diligence to get it across the finish line. And, even just having connections for things like that is so critical. And the best way to do that is by, doing deals and making other people money, and then you'll make money as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. I think especially like the networking piece. I know for me early on, I like didn't really want to talk to people because I didn't want them to know what I was doing or how, or I felt like I'd somehow be like creating more competition or whatever. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the guys you sell deals to, you get into a position that you need something, right? You need private money, or you need a new contractor, or you need like, chances are those are going to be the guys that are going to be willing to help you out because they've made money on stuff with you. I did an interview with Ernesto Hernandez a while back, who's a guy that I sell properties to. He's an out-of-state investor. And there was a time that I needed somebody for painting. And he was like, oh, yep, here's my guy who does everything, like, not holding back or anything, when I could have been like, oh, I don't want him to know that I don't have a painter. Like, you're going to make a lot more networking and being honest than trying to pretend like you have everything figured out all the time. What other takeaways you got on this thing?
Yeah, so I mean, that was one of the big ones, and was obviously the network. But I think it's keeping in mind that you're providing a service in this business, right? For the seller and the buyer. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I see this a lot with other people that wholesale properties, is they get the docs signed, they put it to escrow, and they're like, all right, I'm done. And it's like, well, if you want to get these big paychecks, you want people to keep doing business with you, you got to make the process easy. Yep. And it sucks sometimes, when I'm sitting on hold with the county trying to figure stuff out because they haven't been able to yet. But, I'll sit on hold for a couple hours to make $100,000. That's fine.
Yeah, I think anybody watching this would say that they would do the same.
Right. But a lot of people, they just want to pass that off and make it somebody else's problem. And then they're surprised when things don't close. And you have to have a little bit of hand holding. And then even on the seller side with this one, there was a mobile home on the property, which had its own title, its own deed. And he didn't really know how to handle that. So we had to work with, our lawyers in our escrow company to figure out how to transfer that title and deal with that whole situation to go to the buyers. And there was work. Like, it was definitely a lot of work to get this property across the finish line. But at the end of the day, I mean, 100% worth it, obviously. And then, because of all these hiccups, of course, what happens in this business, you know how it is, Ryan, you're always kind of projecting how much money you're going to be having come in on deals.
Yep.
And you're always, playing the float, right? You're spending it before you have it. And so, of course, we had 2 flips that were closing, and we're like, yeah, so we'll have all these funds coming in. We'll be able to afford the down. That'll be fine. And then sure enough, this gets pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. I think it ended up being over 10 days late from the initial close date.
You're starting to sweat?
Oh, it was the worst, man. So we had 2 deals that were closing, plus we had payroll, plus we had all of our other just like monthly expenses, like our subscriptions and stuff were coming up. And we're like, all right, so we currently have $3,000 in the bank. We're waiting for this to close because we just wired money for 2 flips and we have payroll due and all this other stuff. And like, yeah, we are out of money if this doesn't close in like the next 24 hours. And then thankfully it did. But, I think a lot of people think, yeah.
How loud was the sigh of relief to go from 100 to, or go from 3 to 103 in 24 hours?
Oh my God. Like, it was just, I was literally refreshing my phone, and I was actually on vacation in Florida while this was going down. So I'm sitting there just like, come on, like, go in.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
No, it was the worst. Yeah. So
no, I think I appreciate you sharing that. A lot of investors would be like, oh, I always have money. I've got money all the time. I've got, money falling out of my ears. The one thing I've learned from all of the investors that I work with, this business runs in cycles. Mm-hmm. So, if a flip just sold or if a deal just closed or they just got a cash out refi versus like if it's been a minute, it does ebb and flow. I've shared before like some of the screenshots of some of my company's financials. Like the first $1 million I made, I thought it would look like this, and it was like, oh, nope. It was like, we're trending up, but it's very much like peaks and valleys. Ideally, you want them to be going in the correct direction. But dude, I've been there. We've had that conversation of like, okay, payroll's on Wednesday, it's on Monday. Is this going to close or not? Now ideally, you have personal capital or backup that you can pull from if need be, and you don't just not pay your employees. I've never had that happen, but in case any of them are watching this, like, oh my gosh. But, there have been times when we've invested in extra infrastructure, had multiple properties going on. Right now, I've got 17 deals that I'm working. So just in EMD, I've got like 20 G's out. So it's like, even just sell it, great, let's get that paid back. But I would love to have some other stuff coming in. The kind of last point that I think is worth making here from the outside, I've seen this thing happen on the MLS where a property's listed and then it sells for pennies on the dollar compared to what it was listed for. And I know a lot of investors that like remove listed properties from their marketing, or that like if somebody calls and says, hey, there's a realtor involved, they're like, no, I can't do it. Our line with these is always, I can buy your house or your property, but my offer is going to be substantially less than what you're currently listed for. If you're open to that, great, let's talk. If not, you should just keep it on the MLS and keep dropping a couple $1,000s. But I don't think that's working, or you wouldn't be calling me, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Did you guys have to pay the broker on it?
We didn't. So honestly, our timing was extremely lucky. Okay. So he had this property listed multiple times over the past couple of years, but the same person had been unable to sell it. And then it just so happened that, when our cold caller reached him, he was about, I think it was like 10 days out from his contract with the listing agent expiring. So he basically just emailed her and was like, yeah, I'm not going to list it anymore, whatever. And she was like, all right, fine. Terminated the contract, and then we just bought it instead. So
that's awesome. No, but I think there's big props to you on this of you were like, I don't know, half of what it's listed for, because you didn't really know what this would go for either. And then it sounds like you almost kind of like were not reverse wholesaling it, but going out and kind of like, hey, what would you pay for this? Because you didn't really know how to price it.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And with those sort of situations, when it comes to like a unique property that's kind of hard to evaluate, you got to shoot the shot at some point, right? We really try to not drop contracts or things like that. But, the way that we looked at it, I was like, well, a realtor thinks it's worth mid 400s. It's probably worth at least 200 if like a professional thought that. Yeah. So worst comes to worst, I don't know, we could probably have closed on it and then listed it for like 275 and then sold it,
Yeah, it also shows you if the realtor had probably priced it right, it probably would have sold.
100%.
It's, I think people often give like that license badge just too much credit. I had a guy send me a deal yesterday, a realtor that knows I'm looking for stuff. and was like, hey, here's the numbers on it. Like, here's what we're looking at. And I was like, okay, seems decent, like without me taking a look at it. And then he hits me back and is like, hey, I ran comps wrong. Actually, it's worth $20,000 less than what I thought. And I was like, bro, how do you blow comps by $20,000? Like, I get it. I've run comps. I understand it. But, just because your realtor tells you it's a good deal or it's worth something, as Mike is here to tell you and I'm here to tell you, doesn't mean that it necessarily is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because us being unlicensed, people put a lot of weight on what a license means, but it's such a low barrier to entry to become a realtor. And we've had so many sellers be like, yeah, my sister's a realtor and, she's going to list the property and, she says that your valuation's way off, whatever. And it's like, well, how many transactions has your sister done? Oh, 4 in the last 2 years? Well, we've done 30. So I think we probably at this point know the market a little bit better than her.
I get a kick out of like, investors do the same thing, right? Like they share like the vanity metric of like, oh, I've got 5,000 windows. And it's like just the weird ways we like count things to try to add significance. I won't use some of the ones I actually see because I don't want this to come back and bite me in the rear. But it's like when you meet retail agents and they're like, oh yeah, I did $1 million last year. And I'm like, so you made 36 grand? Like, can we talk about the vet? Like you did like 2 or 4 listings in most major metros. Like, come on, man. Like quit trying to build it into something that it's not.
Yeah.
Mike, I appreciate you hopping on, man. I really think kind of the takeaways on this for people is like, don't be afraid to hop into deals that aren't necessarily in your wheelhouse and try to, there's like that motivational quote, say yes and figure it out on the way down, right? Second, always be networking and talking with people. Don't be afraid to make offers on stuff that's substantially below what it was listed for. And I think kind of fourth, always be networking with additional cash buyers because, when I shoot my deals out, I'll get 5 or 6 offers and some of them I make nothing and some of them I'm making $40,000. The difference between having a business that's not profitable or profitable can all be in who you're working with.
Yeah, totally. And also too, different people want different stuff. So that's something else that we've started doing actually after this is talking to a lot of our buyers and putting notes in our buyers list for like what they're looking for. So then we go to send stuff out and it's only going to people that have expressed interest in that property. Well, like first off anyway, and then if nobody wants it, we'll go along. So
I've got a buddy of mine who charges for that service. If you want to be on his like preferred list of early deals, it's like $2,000 a month.
What?
Yeah, pays for most of his marketing with his subscriptions from his buyers just to get first dibs on his deals. Now, you've got to do volume in order to like justify them paying you that, but they do well with it.
No, you just got to convince people you do a lot of volume, and then they all sign up. And then
I think that's how you get cancels.
That's going to be the next mastermind course, how I make, $20,000 a month wholesaling without actually wholesaling any properties.
Yeah, right. Mike, what's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, on Instagram, the best, just at Mike Invests. I need to get a little bit more active on there, but the hard thing right now is, because we have staff and we have enough systems in place, I don't really do anything that's like sexy anymore in terms of like the real estate world, right? So I'm like mostly just
story of my life.
Yeah, just behind the desk, watching the numbers, answering phone calls. So what I got to do is get my employees out there taking pictures so we actually have some better stuff to post.
Yeah. No, I've ran into that of like, I was in California and all my business was in the Midwest, or now I'm in Florida and most of my business is in the Midwest. And it's like, it's kind of hard for me to be like, oh, on this appointment, we found this, when it's like, I'm hearing about it through a phone call after the fact because I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on and hanging out with us. As always, it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to having you back for your next $100,000 assignment.
Right on. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Drinks on Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to hang out with us. I wish you had the opportunity to hang out with Mike and I in person. Mike is one of those people that when I first met, I was expecting him to be like super like proper and reserved, and is one of the most hilarious people that I've ever spent time with when like you give him some time to get comfortable. So go check him out on Instagram. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you find kind of these like real life, real world case studies, examples of people actually making it in this business, be sure to like the video and subscribe. That way you don't miss out on the next ones. Talk to you next time.